Hi, welcome back. So as part of this training program, we started seeing Kubernetes administration one by one. In last session, we have discussed about to learn Kubernetes, what are all prerequisites you need. I mean the servers, I mean the accounts, I mean the knowledge, right? So as part of this class, we are going to discuss about Kubernetes. What is Kubernetes? Why Kubernetes? What is the future? And what is the architecture? How it works? So these are all we are going to discuss one by one. First of all, what is Kubernetes? So Kubernetes is some more orchestration tool. It's a platform where you can orchestrate all your containers very effectively, and you can use Kubernetes to automate your deployments. And even if you want to scale your application, you can do it on the fly. And also for your end-to-end operation in application which is running in containers, also you can manage very efficiently. So the Kubernetes is more robust nowadays as part of microservices initiatives, and Kubernetes support Docker and also Containerd and CRI-O and Kata containers, previously known as Clear and Hyper, and Virtualite. So basically, you can handle QuickAuto images to run using this. And what is the future of Kubernetes? Basically, you can automate various manual process and controls server provisioning and all your server administration part. And also you can manage more secure in a controlled way as per your IPsec policy or your project related security governance. And you can define your own networking, and also you can define your storage services, and it monitors continuously, checks the health of the node and containers. Of course, all environment under Kubernetes will be fully controlled. And also we can roll back the changes. This is one of the major functionality in Kubernetes. On the fly, you can do all your changes, okay, without affecting. Of course, there are multiple way of deployments and rollbacks. Kubernetes will give you a full control what is happening as part of your environment. And also you can do a mount points, and on the fly you can run your application. How Kubernetes works? So basically in Kubernetes, as part of this learning also, you need master node and you need multiple worker node. This is depends on your project size. Okay, so master node will have full control on worker nodes and worker node related all configuration, application, end to end. And each worker node can handle multiple parts. Basically, part is running on top of the cluster. The cluster is a group of worker nodes, and parts is a bunch of containers. This is what I just explained. So clustered together as a working unit. So the moment you add one physical machine configured as a worker node added to the Kubernetes cluster, so the cluster will looks like one single, but this cluster may have hundreds of thousands of worker nodes. But everything on top of this cluster, only the master node assume it will deploy, but it will have keep track on each worker node reference from master node. And also you can start design your application using parts. We are going to see one by one. Once your part is ready, you can specify part definition. That also I will explain. in a coming sessions, and how many you want to deploy as part of your benchmark, the load benchmark, how much you want for each application, each environment. And Kubernetes is in fully control, and it takes the part and deploys to the worker nodes. As I said, the Kubernetes will have full control on across the infrastructure. And what are the components in Kubernetes? Okay, in Kubernetes, okay, so there are a couple of components you need to understand a little bit. So in Kubernetes, there is a controller manager. In controller manager, the next component is API server, and there is a etcd, which is a real crucial area, and Kubernetes scheduler. And in worker nodes, there is a kubelet agent. This is the agent, and kube proxy service. What are all doing this? Each service. What are the roles actually? What are the functionality? Basically, this controller manager is the person who is verify and approve or validate everything, and always the configuration will be committed here. Any task, while approving, always it will refer to the basically you can say it's a configuration. So it will refer to the current validated configuration and what is you are asking. Say for example, you are asking to increase from 2 to 3 from parts, right? Automatically the Kubernetes the request, all requests will flow through via API request only. So the control manager will validate, and also it will check what is the existing configuration. So it will find, okay, there is a 2 is validated and approved, and now there is a one more change with +1. So immediately this controller manager will approve, and it will go and stage this configuration, and it implement via using the scheduler and kubelet agent help. So once the implementation done, this stage will be committed, make it as a validated and approved current configuration. So whatever task, even it is a failure, this has to be rolled back, so that the etcd should have always up to date. Why? Because if the etcd is not having up to date, there will be a lot of pollution and a lot of gaps. Of course, there will be a lot of issues. So this is a crucial process which always has to be triggered in each and every task, scaling or creating or provisioning or deprovisioning. Every task, this controller manager is playing a very crucial role with the help of etcd, with the help of API service, and with the help of scheduler. Okay, but everybody will listen what controller manager is authorizing. Let's go further. So the one more flow, the similar flow, how Kubernetes works. So the similar way, how Kubernetes works. So the controller will validate each and every request along with the current approved configuration, which is stored in etcd. So this will take the decision, and it will pass on to scheduler with the help of API will go to kubelet agent. So there will be a task, whether it is a successful or failure. If it is a failure, this will not be committed. If it is successful, this will be committed. So the same funda. Okay, so here this master is the server. These are the clients, client 1, client 2, right? So these are all funda you need to keep remember when you working in Kubernetes environment. And this is one more diagram. The same way, controller manager will communicate everything as a API and validate along with etcd configuration, and the kubelet agent will receive the request and make sure the relevant task is completed or failure, and feedback to the same origination, and the etcd configuration will accordingly get committed or will not be committed. So this is the general process will happen each and every task. So the app dependency flow. So in Kubernetes, okay, so we have to create one namespace first. Namespace is a logical you can segregate the environments logically. So in each namespace you can create a part. So to manage this part, how much replica set you want, and in each replica set what kind of a deployment you are going to follow, and for each worker nodes how you are going to define demand set role, because demand set is something, it's a standards or governance or monitoring. So basically those sort of purpose you have to think about the demand set, and how to expose the service, and as part of the load how to expand auto scaling, horizontal pod auto scaling. And in the pod inside there is a containers, right? So in each container what kind of a application image you are going to spin it, and also volume, what kind of a persistent volume you are going to map it to each container, right? And pod distribution budget also you can define, and how to expose. Suppose you have some approved application, map it to the registered domain name, then via ingress you can easily expose with the proper certificate with proper hosting, and also replication controller, and we can schedule the jobs. So these are all we are going to see in hands-on with the step-by-step scripts. And there is a node port. When you deploy something, you want to expose it to outside, because as a web applications, you need to access it to make sure whether it is working fine or is there any bug. So as part of this process, you need to understand there is a node port way of exposing and load balancer way of exposing, as well as ingress, right? So node port normally it will be useful for all your testing purpose, because it's a one-to-one, just to test. Okay, it's working fine. So but load balancer normally you have to have a registered IP. So if you are doing in your own lab, normally you have to have one registered public IP with directly assigned to this infrastructure. But for this learning point of view, we will go with the cloud provider, so that we will get some IP address to test this functionality. And ingress, we will create some domain name and we can test this. And node port, as I said, the node port is you deployed some part inside some containers or running with the some port. Using node port, you exposed directly map to 30,000. So when you want to test this application, which is running inside the container, you can directly test with the this VM IP address colon this port. It will work, because to make sure whatever you deploy, it's working or not. Okay, node port is normally used for testing purpose or development purpose to make sure you are in right track, right? And load balancer. So the load balancer also one of the way you can access it from outside. So the load balancer, you need to change the YAML file. The type is load balancer. So you will get one public IP address. Using that, you can access it from outside. And ingress, say for example, I have a 2-3 application. Say this is one application, this is one application, and there is another application too. So each application mapped to its own domain name, right? Its own domain name, something else, say X. Okay, but I want to access this from outside. So there is a ingress is very crucial. So using ingress type, you can achieve this in a very easy way. And deployments. So in deployments, you need to note down one point is how much replica set you are going to have it, and whether you are going to roll out or roll back. Suppose you are deploying something, say version 1.0. After you deployed, people are reporting there is some lot of bugs. So you want to roll back. So you can immediately roll back without any downtime or without any impact. So to do this, there is couple of scenarios you need to follow, which we will see it in detailed hands-on. So this is the sample YAML, right? So this sample YAML, if you look at this API version, so this parameter and kind parameter, and inside kind there is a metadata. So these are all mandatory field, I would say, and specification. So inside there is a containers, and this one container and this is another container. So basically you want to launch only one container, it's up to you. You want to launch 2 container, it's up to you. But both container you are launching under this one single part, right? So to make this, always remember there is a easiest way you can refer. Let us see the cheat sheet. See, this is the simple formula. See, say for example, this is the part, right? So in part, see here, in part, what is the parameter you are getting? Specification. So let's go to part. So go to part, and there is a go up. See, there is a metadata, right? And there is a kind part. So this cheat sheet will be very handy if you keep it till you get confident. So even there is a specification. So in specification, see, there is a containers. So in containers, what are, see, if you want, you can mention it. If you don't mention it, it will go for a default value. So this is the easiest way you can have it in your packet. This is the very crisp cheat sheet. We also uploaded in our GitHub. Okay, so if you want, you can download this and keep it with you. This cheat sheet also, the link will be mentioned in the comment section. So you can take that link and download it. Even you go with a future service or a replica set or deployment. So everything will be followed in this cheat sheet, which will be really useful and very easy to remember till you get some good understanding on this YAML. If you are not familiar on YAML, or if you are not confident on YAML, right? So stay tuned. We'll come up with more hands-on sessions. Thanks everyone.